Hello everyone, this is Dr. Zabiullah working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Management Studies in Government First Grade College, Gauribidnur. Welcome to the second session on dividend decision. The objective of this session is to make you understand the different types of dividends, differences between cash dividend and stock dividend, and what is a stable dividend policy and its significance? Number one, cash dividend. Cash dividend means the dividend which is paid in the form of cash. It is the most common form of paying dividend by the companies. When the dividends are paid in cash, the cash balance of the company reduces. It dilutes the cash balance of a business. Cash dividends meets the current expectation of the shareholders for cash, and it is advisable when the liquidity position of the company is good. However, when the firm is facing liquidity crunch, it is not advisable for such companies to pay cash dividend. Number two, stock dividend. Stock dividend is the most commonly used type of dividend in India. It means payment of dividend in shares of the company instead of paying cash. Stock dividend is also known as bonus shares. When a company pays dividend in the form of shares, it neither reduces the cash balance of the company nor it brings any amount of cash for the shares issued. The company pays stock dividend only when its liquidity position is weak. Number three, bond dividend. When a company pays dividend in the form of debentures or bonds, it is called bond dividend. Companies pay bond dividend when its cash position is very weak and does not want to lose control over the company by issuing equity shares. When dividend is paid in the form of bonds, the shareholders have to wait few months to convert the bonds into cash. This method is justified only when the company has earned profits, but it has to wait for conversion of current assets into cash. Number four, scrip dividend. When the dividends are paid in the form of transferable promissory notes, it is known as scrip dividend. Generally, the companies pay dividends in the form of scrips when the liquidity position is very weak, and the Companies Act prohibits the Indian companies to pay dividends in the form of scrips. Scrip dividend is being prohibited by the Companies Act 1956. Number 5, property dividend. Property dividend is also known as asset dividend. When the dividends are paid in the form of assets instead of cash, it is known as property dividend. This form of dividend may be followed when the assets of a business are no longer required for operations of the business, and it is usually followed in Western countries and not practiced in India. Number 6, final dividend. The dividend which is paid at the end of accounting year is known as final dividend. It is the dividend which is declared and sanctioned at the annual general meeting and is paid out of the divisible profits of a company. And finally, Number 7, interim dividend. Interim dividend is the dividend which is declared and paid in between two annual general meetings, and it is declared at the annual general meeting of the company. Now let us look at some of the differences between cash dividend and stock dividend. In case of cash dividend, dividend is paid in the form of cash, but in stock dividend, dividend is paid in the form of shares. Cash dividend is the most commonly used method of paying dividend. Stock dividend is generally resorted when the firm is facing severe liquidity crunch. Cash dividend reduces the cash balance of the business. It dilutes the cash balance of the business because the dividends are paid in the form of cash. But in case of stock dividend, since you are paying dividend in the form of shares, there is no outflow of cash. It does not reduce the cash balance. Cash dividend meets the current expectations of the shareholders for cash. Stock dividend meets the future expectations of the shareholders. Cash dividend is advisable for the companies when the liquidity position is sound, and stock dividend is advisable when the solvency position is good and the liquidity position is weak. Cash dividend does not increase the number of shares as you are not issuing any shares here, but in stock dividends, since you are issuing shares to the existing shareholders, the number of equity shares increases. Cash dividend does not have any impact on the earning per share, but stock dividend reduces the earning per share. Let's understand what stability of dividend is and how it is significant. Stability of dividend means regularity in paying dividends. So this policy is considered to be a desirable policy of dividend, and it has a positive impact on the market price of the shares, keeping all other things constant. So most of the shareholders, they prefer stable dividends because keeping other factors constant, stable dividends have a positive impact on the share prices of a company. There are four forms in which stable dividends can be paid. One is by paying a fixed dividend per share, by paying a fixed percentage of net earnings, by paying a small constant dividend per share plus the extra dividend, and paying dividend as a fixed percentage of market value. Any of these four forms can be used for making the payment of dividend regularly to the shareholders. When a company pays stable dividend, both the shareholders and the company secure certain advantages. They are: number one, builds confidence among investors. Payment of a regular and stable dividend helps in building confidence in the minds of investors regarding regularity of dividend. When a company follows a policy of stable dividends, it will not change the amount of dividend if the earnings change temporarily. When the earnings of a company falls, the company does not cut its dividends. By this, The company is conveying a message to the investors that the future of the company is bright. Similarly, the amount of dividend is increased when the earnings of the company increases. Meets investors' desire for current income. There are many investors, such as women, old and retired persons, who prefer to receive income regularly to meet their living expenses. Such income conscious investors will certainly prefer a company with stable dividends to one with unstable dividends. Number three, institutional investors' requirements is also met. Investments are made in a company shares not only by individual investors but also by financial, educational, and social institutions and unit trust as well. Generally, companies are interested to have institutions in the list of their investors. Normally, the institutions prefer to invest in the shares of those companies which pay dividends regularly. Therefore, in order to attract institutional investors, a company prefers to follow a stable dividend policy. Number four, it helps in stabilizing the market prices of shares. Stable dividends helps in maintaining stability in the market prices of the shares, and this is good for both to the company and to the shareholders. A number of studies have been done which shows that when the company pays stable dividends, it increases the market price of shares when the earnings turn down. Number five, helps in raising additional finance. A stable dividend policy is also advantageous to the company in raising external funds. Stable and regular dividend policy tends to make the shares of a company an investment rather than a speculation. Investors who purchase these shares, they tend to hold them for a longer period of time, and their loyalty and goodwill towards the company increases. If the company issues new shares, they would be more receptive to the offer. Thus, raising of additional funds becomes easy for such companies. Number six, spreading of ownership of outstanding shares. Stable dividend policy helps in spreading the ownership of outstanding shares more widely among small investors because the persons with small means, in the hope of supplementing their income, usually prefer to purchase shares of those companies which follow stable dividend policy. Number seven, reduces the chances of loss of control. Because of spreading of ownership of outstanding shares among large number of small investors, the chances of loss of control by the present management over the company can be reduced. And finally, market for debentures and preference shares. A stable dividend policy also helps in selling the debentures and preference shares of the company. The fact that the company has been paying dividends regularly in the past is sufficient assurance to the investors in bonds and preference shares about their regular income. Hence, Good market is provided for the debentures and the preference shares of the company. These are few advantages that is secured by the shareholders and the company when a company follows a stable dividend policy. That's all for today. We shall discuss with few more aspects of dividend decisions in the next class. Thank you.